What's up, it's Jan back at it again with another nerdy bookish video. This is gonna be my February wrap up. Okay, we have the handy dandy stitch mug. We have some sunlight left. We have the location that I film wrap-ups in now apparently. And we have the 25 books that I read in February, which is really freaking good for a month that has 28 days. Hold the applause. If you are new here and didn't know how I do my wrap-ups, I have my stitch mug with all the titles that I read on little slips of paper, and I do it in the form of the reread, rewrite, burn tag. I pull out 3 books at a time and say whether I'd reread, rewrite, or burn them, and it's just a more fun way to do wrap-ups for me. I've been doing this for like over 2 years now, and I absolutely love it. Never looking back. Apologies if my energy is lower than usual. It's like gloomy out and I'm kind of tired, even though I just had a cup of coffee. We usually start with my recap for the month. I have my reading journal here. Like I said, I read 25 books. I didn't read all the books on my TBR though. I have 5 out of 10 on my TBR left. January, I did all 10 and more, and I was really hoping I could do it for a second month in a row, but alas. I do try to read 100 pages a day, so I keep track of my daily page count, physical pages. Not that audiobooks don't count, I just don't want to do the math. So just my physical pages, I read a total of 5,519. Number of BIPOC authors I read in February were 12 out of the 25, almost half, which is okay. I've said it before, but as long as I cross double digits for that category, I feel okay about it. Always could be better though. The best book of the month, it was a tie between 2, but I chose A Quiet Life. The close second was Daughter of Smoke and Bone, but I chose this one because I know that this story would stick with me for a longer period of time, because Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Laini Taylor is the first in a series, and it's fantasy, so I know I'll forget a bunch, but this was memorable, you know? This follows 4 different individuals. They all have their own storylines, and then they come together at the end one way or another. So we're following this dude named Chuck, whose wife died, and he's like coping with that and navigating life without her. And then we have Ella, try not to spoil, so I'm reading the synopsis, who has her missing daughter. You know, you follow her through the journey of looking for said daughter. And then we have Kirsten, she works at an animal shelter, and you follow her going through this like love triangle with a couple coworkers. That one was actually one of my favorites. I love a good multi-POV, and I loved every single one. I was invested in every single character and every single storyline. Some of them I preferred to others, but I still enjoyed the story as a whole and how they all came together at the end and how they like met each other. What I like about this book is that by the end, everyone gets their closure. It's a satisfying ending. You are rooting for each character because this author knows how to like suck you in and makes you feel connected to every character and wants the best for each and every one of them, and you get that at the end, and everyone gets what they want. They get their closure. It's a satisfying wrap up. So obviously gave this one 5 stars. The worst book of February, I gave 1 star to a book I read on Kindle. It was on KU, called A Kingdom of Stars and Shadows. I want to say the author is like Holly Renee or something like that. I picked this up for Romantasy-a-thon, which is a fantasy romance readathon that I co-hosted with a bunch of other people, and the creator was Tori from Tori Between Pages. So thank you again for asking me to co-host. It was so much fun. I think I finished this on the last day of the month, so I didn't even finish it during the readathon, but I started it during the readathon, which was like a week of Valentine's Day. This is another love triangle story. There's fae, there's vampires. This girl gets taken by this king who also has a brother, and then they're basically fighting over her, and she clearly wants one over the other. I mean, there's smut. It's a basic fantasy romance. Like, there's no 2 ways about it. Like, that's what it is. I was liking it at first because I remember saying in my vlog that the first 25% of it, there was not a single smut scene, and I was not feeling smut at that point in time. I'm still not feeling smut at the moment, but I was like happy about that yes, it was a basic fantasy romance, but the smut wasn't like right off the bat on page 1, you know? So I had high hopes for it, and then it just dragged and dragged and dragged, and it was like the same thing over and over, and at that point I was like in too deep, and I'm like, I'm not DNFing. It's a 259 page book. But yeah, I ended up just hating it. I hated being there. The characters got so annoying. The things that the guys said to this girl, I was just like, ugh, give it a rest. I was so over her, and like they kept saying shit about her nub, and I was like, I am not in the mood to read anything more about Princess Nub, okay? Like, I'm over it. And these 2 guys were just so fucking just toxic. I didn't care. And by the end of it, I was like, wow, I'm so glad this is over. Definitely not reading the sequel, no matter how fucking short it is. And the fact that I could get it for free on KU. Like, I don't give a shit. So that was the worst book of the month. Also, one of my goals for this year, as well as last year, is to read at least one nonfiction per month. And this month I read 3. Know My Name by Chanel Miller, which I gave 5 stars. Queer Ducks, I don't remember the author, but I gave that one 4 stars. I listened to that mostly on audio. I think I started it physically. And then I also read Ain't Burned All the Bright by Jason Reynolds, which I listened to on audio, which I gave 5 stars as well. Know My Name, I think you've heard about this. This has so many trigger warnings, so do look them up. If you are sensitive to discussions about rape and sexual assault and all those things, this goes deep into those subjects. So it was the #1 hardest book that I ever put myself through. The audio is fantastic. I listened to it mostly. I wish I read it physically, at least follow it along with it, because there are so many good quotes. Chanel Miller is a phenomenal writer. I do want to reread this no matter how difficult the subject matter is, because I want to annotate, I want to highlight so many freaking quotes throughout this book. Her voice is so powerful and it was a lot, so I recommend it, but like, tread with caution. And then Queer Ducks I gave 4 stars because in my vlog I described the audiobook narrator as one of those like, but wait, there's more infomercial people, you know? That's what he sounded like. So I couldn't fully get behind the audio without, like, I couldn't take it too seriously. I mean, overall it's not a serious type of book. I mean, I think it's very well researched, like it's thoroughly researched. It's basically discussing like sexuality in animals, in the animal kingdoms, and then the point of it was to counter argue those people who say like, oh, like being queer is unnatural because creatures in the animal world, like the non-human animals, don't do any of these same-sex things. And the points were proven, y'all. Like, that book is so good, and it is pretty funny. Some parts of the humor did sound like it was trying a little bit too hard, so that's why I also deducted a star, but at the end of the day, it's a great book. Like I said, well-researched, points are just so well executed, well, what's the word, articulated. The author interviews a bunch of other researchers. It's good. Okay, my coworker recommended it to me. The physical book has like illustrations, so it adds to the reading experience. And then Ain't Burned All the Bright is a poetry book by Jason Reynolds. I listened to it on audio. It's like the shortest audiobook ever. Basically, Jason Reynolds performs the poem and then a full cast performs it right after, and it's the same poem, and they're both just as powerful. It was 2 different reading experiences for the same poem, and it was just amazing to listen to, and it took like probably like a half hour of my time, if that. And Jason Reynolds is just such a talented poet, such a talented writer and narrator. Like, I recommend listening to all his books because his voice, like I listened to Long Way Down and he narrates that too, and it's just so pleasant to listen to and so like inspiring and impactful. That one wouldn't take a lot of your time, so I highly recommend that one if it's available on your Libby or whatever, if you're looking for a little short audiobook. Another one of my goals is to read at least 1 book on my Kindle every month, and like I said, I read A Kingdom of Stars and Shadows. I also read The Sprite and the Gardener, which is a graphic novel that I read for a 24-hour readathon for my Patreon, and I gave that one 4 stars just because, like, for what it is. Like, it was really cute, it was adorable little story about this sprite who was frustrated that humans took over like gardening in general, because sprites, you know, that's like their job is to like make gardens thrive and shit. So it was just a cute little story about that and how a human and a sprite like work together to make these flowers bloom and this garden beautiful for the human's mom, because she works all the time and didn't have time to tend to the garden. Yeah, that was that. I mean, it took me maybe half an hour to read, so that was a quick little fun time. And then I also read The Vessel by Adam Neville on my Kindle. I read this for my unmuted and unhinged sprints that I do on my Patreon with Joey, and we read horror novellas in one sitting and live react to them in this like live show, and it's a good time. But yeah, I think I gave this one 2 stars, maybe 1. Let me see. I forget. I gave it 1 star. It like dragged. It was disappointing. All I remember is this kid played too big of a role for no fucking reason. Her name was Izzy, and I only remember that because she was annoying as fuck. But yeah, this was just like not what we expected. We wanted more creep factor in it and we didn't get it. The cover's cool though, and I definitely want to read more by Adam Neville. I own No One Gets Out Alive, and I know that one's supposed to be like genuinely scary. There's an adaptation for it which I want to watch too, so that's that. My hair is progressively progressively getting worse throughout this video. I apologize. And then I also try to participate in Buzzword-a-thon every month, which is Kayla from Books and Lala's annual reading challenge, where she picks a word or phrase or category or whatever, and you have to read books with that word, phrase, category in that title. This month's buzzword was verbs. So I read Know My Name, which I already talked about, Ain't Burned All the Bright, Before the Coffee Gets Cold. Damn, I already sold that book. I gave it 3 stars. It was mediocre. One of the stories though made me sob my freaking eyes out at like way past midnight. I was reading it in bed and I was just sobbing. That one was good, but like the rest of it, like I would have given it a 2 stars if that particular story didn't exist. Basically, it's about this coffee shop with one particular table that you could sit at, where you can time travel, and then there's like all these rules, and one of them is that you have to be back in present time before your coffee gets cold. It's like 4 or 5 stories or whatever following different people, and it was kind of redundant, but I'm glad I read it because it's been on my radar for freaking years. But I don't think I'm gonna read, like I know there's like spin-offs and sequels or whatever, I don't think I'm gonna read any more of those. Like I said, I got rid of it as soon as I finished reading it. So, and then I also read How We Fall Apart via audio. This was basically Gossip Girl / Pretty Little Liars, but make it Asian. The audiobook was pretty good. It was addictive to listen to, and I knew it was a short audiobook, so I just finished it. I mean, I probably will read the sequel. Not that I remember anything that happened, because it was basically Pretty Little Liars, like to a T, sprinkled with like discussions about racism against Asians in the academic world. I don't even remember who the killer was or what happened, but I had a good time. I think I gave it 3 stars, maybe 4. 3. I gave it 3. That was my first read of February, unexpectedly. Just a random audiobook I listened to at work. Let's go right into the wrap up with our first 3 books before the sun completely disappears. My lighting already sucks, so. All right, number 1 is Before the Coffee Gets Cold, which I just talked about. And then we have The Near Witch by V.E. Schwab. And the third one is A Quiet Life, which I also already talked about. So obviously would reread A Quiet Life, best book of the month once again. I would burn, oh shit. I gave The Near Witch 2 stars. I gave Before the Coffee Gets Cold 3 stars. But honestly, I think I would burn Before the Coffee Gets Cold because clearly I got rid of it, but I still have The Near Witch because V.E. Schwab is like my favorite author of all time. So I would rewrite The Near Witch to make it less middle grade-esque, because I think that's why I didn't really like it, because I read Gallant, I think it was in the summer last year. That's what it felt like, was Gallant. And the audiobook is awful. So I tried it audibly and then I tried reading it physically and I was like, I can't do it. So I just pushed through the audiobook and followed along with it. And basically there's a small town, children are missing, which is like one of my least favorite tropes, and I don't care. Everyone thought it was this one friend of this girl. Both of these people are like trying to prove everyone else wrong and proving that it's the Near Witch taking these children. I don't know. I didn't care. I was not captivated whatsoever. The only reason I didn't give it a 1 star is because it's V.E. Schwab and her writing feels like home. That's it. I love the writing. I love the atmosphere, the whimsy, and the witchiness. But other than that, like I wanted more witchiness. I wanted more plot, no missing children. Like I don't care. I didn't read the synopsis before I read this, so probably on me. But even like the short story at the end, the bonus content of the special edition, I was like, I don't even want to read it anymore because I didn't care. But that's how I would rewrite that, I guess. Okay, the next 3 are Nana by Brandon Massey, Promise Boys by Nick Brooks. I'm surprised I remember that because I listened to it on audio. And then Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute by Talia Hibbert. I'd probably burn the Promise Boys because that one I gave 3 stars. Oh, I gave it 4 stars. I think towards the end I really enjoyed it, but it took a lot for me to enjoy it. The audiobook was really good. It was very well crafted. They had like a bunch of background noise and background like muffled voices, and like they had sound effects and a full cast, and then there were like news flash breaks. They had a different narrator for those. So it was a good listening experience, but the plot itself, I'm not a fan of YA thrillers, so I wouldn't reread it. I didn't really care through most of it, but the ending was pretty good. I'd reread Nana because holy shit was this a ride. I gave this 5 stars. This is probably one of the best horror books I've ever read. I'm not even gonna lie. I was hooked from the very start. I read this for Gabby's book troop book club. So much fun discussing this with her. Basically, this woman dies right off the bat, like in the prologue. We're at her funeral, the next chapter. No one knows how she died. They think she just like fell down the stairs while she was home alone, but there's like this sinister thing that happened that only the reader knows. The woman that lady took care of pretty much all her life, her birth mother comes to the funeral and basically just like invites herself to the family's home and is like, oh my god, I'll take care of you while you're grieving, we'll reconnect and this and that. that, and then she like makes inappropriate comments toward her husband. She does all these creepy things. She makes this like skincare shit. She's like cooking all the time, and she like extends her stay without permission from, you know, the husband and the wife. Like, it was just all these weird things, right? And then all this shit happens around the family throughout this person's stay at their house. People are dying, things are going wrong. That's all. I was gonna say one more thing, but that's kind of a spoiler. So I highly recommend. I first heard about this book from Bree from Lock Booktition. So when Gabby asked me to read it for her book club, I was like, absolutely. I'm so glad I did, because I was screaming, viscerally reacting throughout this entire thing. Like, my jaw was dropping to fucking hell and back, because every chapter, every single chapter, which by the way, the chapters are really fucking short, so it's another reason I flew through this in like a day and a half. Every chapter, something weird or creepy happens, and it's like non-stop horror, and there's just all this weird shit. Like, there's no way that you could have predicted the majority of the things that happen in this book. Would reread this. And then I guess that leaves Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute to be rewritten. I gave this one 5 stars as well. This is Talia Hibbert's YA debut novel, and I read the entirety of the Brown Sisters trilogy. Really like Dani Brown. Eve Brown was alright, Chloe Brown, flop. But this one was really well written, I think. I was so nervous because it was her YA debut. I didn't want it to be cringy. I didn't want the humor to be trying too hard, but it was none of those things. These two characters are basically in this competition for the scholarship, and they're still trying to figure out what they want to do, trying not to disappoint their parents, but they really want to do what they've been wanting to do. Like, the main male character wants to be a writer, but his dad's a lawyer and has always wanted him to like follow his footsteps, you know, that basic storyline. There's also a lot of like mental health rep in this, because again, the main guy has OCD. So it's friends to enemies to lovers. They used to be best friends, and then he got popular and she did her own thing, and then they had a falling out, and then now they're like reconnecting because they're both looking into this scholarship program thing. And the conversations that they had together, I thought were really mature for their age. Their falling out was typical high school bullshit. Teenage, you know, like, oh, you think you're above me, like, bye, you have new friends, bye. Like, that type of shit, which is understandable because it is YA. So I thought it was really well done. Talia Hibbert can do no wrong. Her humor stayed the same, her writing stayed the same, her character development, all the same as the Brown Sisters trilogy. Olivia Rizalate described the main female character in this as like the little cousin of the Brown Sisters, and I thought that was so accurate. The humor was great, the banter was there, the characters had very distinct personalities that you would just fall in love with or absolutely hate. And Talia Hibbert herself has OCD, and she said in her author's note, I believe, or something like that, that like she made, I think the main dude's name was Brad. She made Brad deal with OCD a lot better than she does in real life. So that was interesting that it was like own voices in that way as well. I forgot that I was saying I would rewrite this. I guess I would rewrite it. I don't know if I was a huge fan of the setting of like, they had to do this like survivalist shit in the woods. I kind of wanted it to be either more intense than that or like not at all. Because I feel like those parts were so easily skimmable and just it didn't have to be there. I was more invested in the friendship and the relationship and the characters rather than their journey to this scholarship prize or whatever. I guess that changed the setting, but it was also like a unique way to like bring them together and work as a team and all that. So I feel like there were some conversations too that I probably would have changed, but overall, I mean, I really enjoyed it. I had a great time. I am sweating in this sweater, bro. I cannot. Ain't Burned All the Bright by Jason Reynolds, which I already talked about. The Last Tale of the Flower Bride. Where is that book? It's by Roshani Chokshi. I feel like I'm saying her name. I hear her name being said several different ways, but I'm gonna keep saying it like Roshani Chokshi. I've heard Roshni Chokshi too. I don't know. But that's the book. And then we have A House with Good Bones by T. Kingfisher, which is an ARC sent to me by Tor. So thank you, Tor. I mean, okay. I'd probably reread Ain't Burned All the Bright because it was so, like I said, pleasant to listen to, inspiring. It was basically poetry about the pandemic and how this family dealt with it. And I think the dad was sick. And then there were all these metaphors about like the face masks and everything. So I would definitely reread that. I would rewrite A House with Good Bones. I really did enjoy this one. I read this for a 24-hour readathon as well. I gave this one 4 stars. I think I read this one for my Patreon 24-hour readathon. So if you haven't seen that vlog, what did I say about this? This is actually a pretty funny book. I was not expecting all that humor to be there. I laughed out loud so many times. I love T. Kingfisher's writing. I absolutely loved What Moves the Dead, if you didn't know. I think about this book like every other day of my life. I considered moving it up to 5 stars, but the ending could have been something else and I would have been happier. You know, I like liked the ending. I didn't mind. I liked the little twist. Like, it was unexpected for me personally. But I think there could have been more done with the bugs, because the main character is an entomologist, so she works with bugs for a living. Basically, she goes to, I think it was her mom's house, and the grandma or aunt dies. One of the family members died. And so the mom like started decorating the house in this like sterile manner where there was nothing on the walls and shit like that. And then there are these creepy vultures, and I thought there was gonna be more with that at the end, but not really. And then there's this other thing about the house and the garden. It was definitely a spooky good time, and it was unexpected, so I was like flying through the pages and having a blast. But I think the ending could have also been something else, and I would have liked it better. It probably could have been a 5-star if the ending were different. I still loved it. I will read everything T. Kingfisher writes, so I'm excited to get through her backlist eventually. And then I'd probably burn The Last Tale of the Flower Bride. For this one, I think I read this for, oh, my most recent 24-hour readathon that I just uploaded. That one was like my first 24-hour readathon for YouTube in like months and months. This is a fantasy romance. It's super whimsical, and I really enjoyed the first like 50 pages. I thought this was gonna be 5 stars for a while, and then it got to the second POV, and I was like, I don't want to be here anymore. I don't like this character. I don't care. I was just highly confused because I think this is the first book I read by this author. I read like half a middle grade of hers via audio. She's very purple prose, so like Laini Taylor fans would love this book, I think. Just fairy tale-esque book fans would love this book. I gave this one 4 stars because the writing was so pretty, but I was just very much confused for the majority of the book. But I really enjoyed the first 50 pages where the bridegroom was just like professing his love for Indigo. And if you asked me like what the plot was, I could not tell you for the life of me. If you held a gun to my head and asked me, I wouldn't be able to tell you. I don't even remember. I think there was a house with like a bunch of rooms or doors or something. I don't know. I've watched a couple reviews where it was like, oh, the ending was so predictable. If you're like used to fairy tale type of books, like you kind of could figure it out. And I was like, everything went over my head. I don't know about you, but I mean, the cover is pretty, the writing is gorgeous. I just didn't like the female POV, which was like half the book, so I would burn this one. Jesus, why is this taking so fucking long? All right, we have Daughter of Smoke and Bone, speaking of Laini Taylor, Spy Family Volume 2, which is a manga, and then Queer Ducks, which I already talked about. Would reread Daughter of Smoke and Bone. This is the one that was a close second to my favorite book of the month. I had such a fun time reading this. I flew through it for how big of a book it is. The chapters are so short. The characters are great. I love Susanna. I'm gonna be reading the sequel very soon, hopefully this month. But there's angels, there's demons. The plot is just so good. The reveals are so well done. You find out more and more things all throughout the book, like till the very end. It's just such a fun time. There's so much humor in this, like the banter between, what the fuck's her name? Karu and the dude that she talks to all the time. It's just great writing all around. Like I said, purple prose. I have read Strange a Dreamer and Muse of Nightmares, and I significantly prefer this one to that series. So I'm really excited to read the sequel. I would reread this in a heartbeat. I loved it so much. Okay, would burn Spy Family because it's a cutesy manga. There are other volumes. I don't really care. Queer Ducks, I have to rewrite. Take out some of the cringy humor because that was annoying. So there's that. All right, we're gonna try to speed through the rest because I am sweating and I need water. I am feeling dehydrated, my dudes. The Cabin at the End of the World by, is it Paul Tremblay? Jackal by Erin E. Adams. And then A Kingdom of Stars and Shadows, which obviously I'm gonna burn. Oh shit, I would burn The Cabin at the End of the World too. Yeah, okay. I think I gave The Cabin at the End of the World 2 stars. Maybe I gave it 1 star, who knows? I gave it 2 stars. Okay, I guess I'd rewrite it by changing the ending. The ending was very lackluster. I just felt like nothing was resolved. I listened to it on audio. I'm really glad I didn't waste my time reading it physically. I only read it because I was interested in possibly watching the movie, but I heard the movie fucking sucks ass too. But I still kind of want to watch it, to be honest, now that I read the book and wasted my time on it. So might as well waste even more time, right? But yeah, I would rewrite the ending because it sucked. And then Jackal I would reread because I gave this one 4 stars. This was my book club pick for January. Live show was in February with Brie from Lock Petition, who I mentioned earlier. And we had a really good discussion. I will link that down below if I remember. But I would definitely reread this. It had so many good discussions and quotes and social commentary and just the plot itself too. And especially now that Brie explained to me some of the like the symbolism and what the jackal means in history and everything. Yeah. definitely see this in a different light, and I would reread it with that in mind, and I feel like it'd be a 5-star once I do that. But I don't change my rating, so where's that? I didn't even say what that's about, but I will have that live show link down below to save my breath because I'm tired. I do have spoiler-filled dedicated reading vlogs for all my book club picks, but those go on my Patreon for the lowest tier. If you're interested, all the links are down below. We're vampire themed, we're called The Lair. It's a fun time. We have a Discord, we have buddy reads, 24-hour readathons every month. I would highly appreciate it if you join. If not, it's fine. Stuck With You by Hazel, no. What the fuck's her name? Allie Hazelwood, which I read via audio during a 24-hour readathon at like 3 a.m. Sprite and the Gardener, which I talked about, and Under One Roof by Allie Hazel. Oh god, I have 2 of them. Let's see if I remember them enough to like distinguish. I think Stuck With You was the... No, Stuck With You I read at work, I think. No, Under One Roof I read at work via audio. Stuck With You I read during the 24-hour readathon. Stuck With You is the elevator one. These are all her STEMinist novellas, so they're all pretty much fucking the same. Like all her books are formulaic, we all know this. But Stuck With You is the elevator one. Under One Roof is the forced proximity in the same apartment because she inherited it or something. And he was like related to the woman who died. Okay, I'd probably burn the Sprite and the Gardener. Under One Roof I would reread because I think that one was my favorite one out of all the STEMinist novellas, because that one actually had like, good steamy scenes. I think it had the least amount of like, oh my god, he's such a, you know, large man, whatever, that cliche bullshit that Allie Hazelwood writes about. I gave this one 4 stars, and I think all the other STEMinist novellas I read by her, I gave 3 stars. Fuck, I really don't remember. Stuck With You. When did I read that? 2017. So it had to be, I gave that one 4 stars too. What the fuck? I'm getting them all mixed up, but really I like both of them. I think I would reread the Under One Roof one. I think that one was my favorite. And then I would rewrite Stuck With You. They got all the Viking bullshit. I think this is the one where she called him a Viking and like the size of an oak tree or whatever. So I would take all that out because who says that? No one fucking says that. But that was a cute little story because I think they met at a coffee shop and then they got stuck in an elevator and they both worked at rival law firms. I think that was the one where he like handled her insecurities well and stuff. So that one was pretty good too. Okay, now we have The Vessel, Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, and then How We Fall Apart. Okay, How We Fall Apart I'd probably reread just to get like a sense of the plot again if I wanted to reread it like before I read the sequel. I wouldn't be mad about rereading it because like I said, the audiobook was enjoyable. I would burn The Vessel because I already talked about it and it was 1 star. Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, I gave 3 stars. In reality, it's probably a 2. I have like a personal vendetta against this book now. I'm really annoyed that I didn't give this 5 stars. I would have to rewrite it. How would I rewrite it? To make it more cohesive, because so Sid from Sid Bookworm actually invited me to talk about this for her Patreon book club. We just had that discussion on Friday and we were talking about how it felt like a whole different book by the end. It felt like an author duo wrote it. It just didn't feel like the same book by the time you got to the ending. And I understand that the character had, you know, character growth and how like she treated people and how she like prioritized different things by the end. Fine. But it just wasn't the same vibes. It had all like the cottagecore fairy cozy fantasy vibes, and like I kept having to remind myself that I had to take the plot at face value, where it's like very meandering throughout the majority of the book. She's just collecting data for her fucking encyclopedia about these fairies, and I just feel like it was so forgettable for me. Everything that Sid was saying during that live show and people in the chat, I was like, that happened, and I could not for the life of me tell you when, where, what, who. I was so over it. I read this during Romantasy-a-thon. I'll link that vlog down below and I talk about it even more, but it took me like a whole fucking week to finish because I was trying to only read this book for some odd ass reason. I just wanted more. I had such high hopes for this book and I was highly disappointed. The cover is stunning and I'm so mad. It'll be on my Pango if you're interested. Always linked down below. Yeah, I think we have 4 more. We have Know My Name by Chanel Miller. This is the last physical book that I own in this list, so good luck editing, Jan, inserting all these fucking photos. The House in the Pines. Oh, what the hell is her? Anna Reyes, I think, is the author. I listened to that via audio as well. And then All Her Little Secrets, also an audiobook that I listened to during work, by Wanda Morris, I want to say is the author's name. Would reread Know My Name, already said why, already talked about how amazing it is. House in the Pines, I gave 2 stars. All Her Little Secrets, I think I gave 4 stars. Yeah, gave 4 stars. So I would burn The House in the Pines, would rewrite All Her Little Secrets. How would I rewrite it? I don't even know. It was a good plot overall. It was about this lawyer, and was she a lawyer? I think she was a lawyer. I think the reveals were done really well, and like all her secrets, that's the title, were revealed very well, but I don't remember. It was a very forgettable thriller for me. The audiobook was good though. The narrator was nice to listen to and it was engaging. I think it was a little bit too long for what it was though. I think it definitely could have been tightened up, cut down, so sure. We'll say that for how to rewrite it. All right, the last one is The Overnight Guest by Heather Gudenkopf. Gave that one 5 stars. Honestly, such a good thriller. Renee from Reading with Renee recommended that to me and I'm so glad I read it. It's a very snowy thriller, so if you're into that, that's what it is. Basically this, I don't even remember the setup, but basically this woman finds this child in the snow during a snowstorm. She takes the kid in and then later on there are all these like twists and reveals. She finds this other woman as well and then they like work together through the snowstorm and then tell each other their backstories and everything. Trigger warnings for child abuse and domestic abuse, but overall I think it was such good writing, such a good plot. I would probably reread it, honestly. It was a fun time. It was a good audiobook as well. So before this clip cuts me off, that's my wrap up. Let me know if you read any of these books, if you agree with me, disagree with me in the comments down below. If you made it to the end, just put a snowflake emoji to represent the overnight guest in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. Hope y'all had a great day. Stay safe, stay positive, and stay spooky always, and I'll see y'all on my next one. Bye.